Okay, hi everyone. Um, it sounds like I have a lot of confusion about what's happening with our assignment. So I just want to make a quick video to one, say hello. Yes, I'm still alive. I'll be back on Tuesday. I just really want to apologize. I did get really sick. My dad and I, we actually did get COVID. And so we've been quarantined, and it's not fun. It's really, really debilitating. Um, so that's why you may have noticed some of your emails. You'll get email responses at like 4 o'clock in the morning, or 2 o'clock in the morning, or 11 in the morning, or 3 p.m. And it's just because I sleep a lot. I sleep so much, and I just let myself sleep because I think it's the best way to recover. I'm really not sure. So that's kind of why I've been sporadic at getting responses back to you guys, or when I'm able to do something. If you email me and you need a grade coming in, or something like that. So, hopefully everybody's been doing good. Hopefully you guys are all enjoying school. And so I just want to make this video to clear up things and hopefully make more sense for those of you that got confused. So last week, you were to create two character sheets, a protagonist and an antagonist. And then you were also to create a plot story, a plot diagram. So, and then this week, I'm like, all right, now write your rough draft. And I have a lot of students email me and they're like, Miss Dunn, what are we writing our rough draft about? I'm like, you guys, about the plot diagram. We're writing narrative short stories. We're writing short stories about things that you guys make up, a story that you created with your characters that you created. So you're using your two characters, your protagonist and your antagonist, and you hopefully put them into the plot diagram. And with that plot diagram, we are creating a story. So these are the skeletal backbone to our story. The rough draft is the meat that makes that story a story. So I'm gonna go over these really quickly. This video is not gonna be like edited or anything because I find that I can upload them faster if I don't do any kind of editing on them. So I'm just gonna go through this quickly, and I'm going to skip over some things even, but hopefully you get the main idea. Okay, so I'm gonna start with my protagonist character creation. The story that I'm going to be using, I'm actually using a story that I've already created. A friend and I were actually writing a book together of several short stories, and they're meant they're meant to be scary stories for kids. So it's a scary story, and I'm going to spoil the story for you. I'm going to give you the story as well. Just a heads up, this is not a free story. The only people that have access to the story actually have to subscribe to my Patreon every month, um, and they can read the story. So you guys are getting a free treat of something that costs money that I work really hard on. And I'll talk a little bit about our process as well because I mean it has a lot to do with what we're doing here. Okay, so I'm going to go into the character traits. I already have my characters created, but let's say I'm starting from scratch. Okay, but I'm going to kind of speed through this. So let me swap my camera here. Okay, so character creation. Let me go ahead and go back. My main character, his name is Ben. I don't know if he has a last name. I'm going to give him the last name Jones. He is a boy. His age, I'm going to say he's about 10, maybe 11. Race, his little brother has sandy colored hair, so I'm going to say he's white. Blah, blah, blah. We're going to go through these. It says his weight, and I'm going to put pudgy. And that's actually never addressed in the story, but when I imagine him in my head, I imagine him as a pudgy little boy. Alignment, I really do want to say his alignment. He is neutral good. He's not gonna like go save somebody and protect the world, and he's not gonna like break all the rules to make sure everybody is good. But I mean, if he is there, here and now, and something's happening, he's going to try and make the best decision. Physical description: young, pudgy boy. Is that how I spell pudgy? Is it just a Y? Um, young pudgy boy. And this is physical description. I imagine him with dark hair. I don't know. I'll add some other things. Attitude, he's kind of bossy. He has a little brother. He's not a bad boss per se, but he's got that older brother, personality. So he's bossy. Average intelligence, average strength. I'm skipping these. These ones are really important, the ideals. What principles will they never betray? So Ben will never betray his little brother. I might want to add this in detail. So he might betray his little brother, but it's okay because he's the boss. Anybody ever have an older sibling or are the older sibling where like whatever they say goes? But if anybody else ever tries to mess with his little brother Davy, they're going to have to pay for it. So never betray his little brother or let others take advantage of him. And you guys can change the size if you want. I'm going to speed through this, so I'm not going to. What will prompt them to make sacrifices? The protection of his little brother. Protection of Davy. That's all I got for right now. And what drives them to do what they do? Being the boss and being in charge. If you read through my story, you're going to realize that the mother drops off these two boys at the summer vacation with their grandparents, as they always do at the beach. And she always puts Ben in charge because he's the oldest. So it's kind of his job to be in charge. I'm not going to go through these, but when you create your character, you can answer these just fine. There should not be a skipped section over here. You can't be like, oh, his favorite animal is no favorite animal. You can come up with them. It's your character. You can make that up, okay? I don't want to see these blank, okay? If he really doesn't like animals, then you can kind of say that. Like, what animal does he love? Like, he detests creatures and he thinks they should all die. I mean, that if that's part of his character, then yes. But it can't be a lazy response like, oh, he doesn't have favorite food. Yes, he does, okay? Everybody has a favorite food. Unless it's part of his character to not have a favorite food. Okay? So make sure those are all filled out. You don't necessarily have to fill out additional. It's just if you didn't feel like any of these really covered your character and you feel like it's really important you know, like Squidward, it's really important we know what instrument is his favorite, the clarinet, then you would put that in there. So if your character has something that I did not cover here, put it in additional. Once again, over to the right, these are the really important ones. So whom do they care about most? Ben is Davy, his little brother. I'm going to add that little note in their little brother. So what's happening here is this character sheet is for you, the writer. This is for you to understand who your character is. And it doesn't stop at your story. It's not confined within your 500 to 1,000 word story. It goes beyond that. If your character is no longer 10 years old, if he's 35 years old, these bonds should be about the same. These should carry with him. You should be able to put him in situations and he still stay true to those situations. Of course, we change over time and that would be part of character development. But for the most part, they're core beliefs, okay? So to what place do they feel they have a special connection? Grandparents' beach house. He loves that place. What is his most treasured possession? I don't really know if I have anything on here. I'm going to say Sorry the game because they mentioned it, but I don't think it's his most cherished possession. But I'll put that in there just for now. Flaws. So important. They have to have flaws. If not, your character is just boring. We need to know what makes them angry. So things that make him angry. His brother makes him angry. And what scares him? The safety of his brother. For two reasons. One, he does love his brother. And two, he's put in charge. It's his job. So if Davy gets hurt, then obviously he failed his job. So I guess that's another thing that scares him is failure. I'm sorry, my nose is itchy. Okay. What are their vices? Remember, I told you these are like drugs and alcohol more seriously. He's a 10-year-old boy. His vices are jealousy and being too bossy, being too in charge. Background. This is really important to fill out, so I'm going to fill this out really quickly for Ben. Ben has a strung out mother and an estranged father. Estranged means like they're not really in touch. He doesn't really talk to his dad that often. His dad does exist and he's somewhat involved in his life. And that might be important to put in here because maybe we want to change the story. Maybe we want to adjust how things go. So I'm like, father does have contact with Ben and Davy, but he rarely visits and doesn't really participate in their lives other than paying child support. He does pay child support. He does do that, but he just doesn't really interact with them. Okay. He has a younger brother who he takes care of a lot because their mom is single and she's usually working. And their parents, or their grandparents, obviously live away at the coast. Where are they from? They live in the city. How did they get their name? Me as the writer, so I can't remember where Ben came from, but because it's a story about the ocean, Davy got his name from Davy Jones, Davy Jones' locker. And that's why I put Jones as Ben's last name, because of Davy Jones. So that's where those came from. And I might write that down in here. I'm not going to do that right now just because that's stuff for Davy, and I don't remember where I got Ben's name. Photo, I would just Google an image of a short, pudgy, dark-haired kid. I'm not going to do that necessarily right now, but there should be some kind of photo. And if you're artistic enough, you want to draw your character, you can do that as well. What do they want most in life? How far will they get what they want? He wants to help his mom. I think that's ultimately why he does everything. Why he takes care of Davy, why he makes his decisions. He ultimately wants to help his struggling mother. And how far will he go to do what they want? He'll push the boundaries to take care of her. This, like I said, this goes beyond just your story. This is your character. They are deep. You are creating them into existence. So, like, he also wants to protect Davy at all cost. So, in the future, let's say Ben is like 25 and Davy is 21. I don't know exactly their age difference, but let's say, and Davy gets a DUI. Will Ben, let's say Ben's a cop, and will Ben lie and hide his little brother's DUI so his little brother doesn't get in trouble? Will he do that? And so even though we said that Ben is a good kid, I mean, he's trying to take care of his little brother. So I think Ben would absolutely sweep it away. He would hide the fact that his brother had a DUI, and he'd make sure his brother doesn't go to jail or serve community time or whatever. So that's the character that Ben is. But I mean, you know, if this was Superman and Superman was in this situation, Superman would never. Like, no. You have to pay for what you did. You might be a good person, you made a dumb mistake, but you have consequences. I feel like Davy would be able to escape those consequences if Ben was in charge. Okay? So that's where we have to develop our character and push it. So let me give you a quick background about what this story is. So I will share this story with you. I'll give this story to you guys. You'll have access to it. It's actually kind of long, but I can't share any of the rest of my stories with you because of the whole book deal. So this is the only one I can share with you because this one was released before for some other patrons. The story is that Ben and Davy go to their grandparents' house over the summer vacation. And they always do. And their grandparents live on the beach. And they love going to the beach. They think it's so fun. They love to swim and have adventures. Well, when they get there, they ask their grandfather to tell them a story. And their grandfather used to be in the Navy. And he tells them a story about a siren who tried to attack their men. And this is not a siren like The Little Mermaid. This is not Ariel splish splashing in the ocean. These are sirens that take people to the ocean and drown them and eat them. So the boys start to get scared of the story, and then they're, the next day they go out and adventure on the beach. And they're very cautious of sirens, because that's, when young kids hear stories, like when my little sister and I, we shouldn't have, we watched the Leprechaun movie, the scary one, and of course, after that movie, we were very cautious of leprechauns. We had to protect everything. We put all of our, for some reason we made up the rule that if you're wearing green, you were safe. So we put all our stuffed animals in green socks and put green stickers on them, whatever we could do to protect them. So, we kind of pulled that in with Davy and Ben here. So they're kind of cautious of sirens, but they're also at the beach. They're not going to let this silly story ruin their day. So they begin to play hide and seek. And as they're playing hide and seek, Ben is to be he's it, so he's supposed to be finding Davy. Well, he runs into a girl. And Ben is at that age where girls are starting to become interesting. And so he starts talking to the girl and he forgets all about finding Davy. And Davy eventually gets tired of waiting and finds Ben, becomes a little jealous of this relationship that Ben is starting to develop with this girl. The girl is starting to show signs and they're very suspicious of her that she might be a siren. But, they know it's just a story. Over time, more and more things go to lead to realize that she quite possibly is a siren. And she convinces the boys to go out into the ocean to play. And so they're going out into the ocean. They're going further and further than they've ever gone before. And at some point, Ben has to overcome his infatuation with this girl and realize that his little brother is not capable of going this far out into the ocean. But by the time he realizes that they're going too far out, the girl begins to drown Davy. And she reveals that she, in fact, is a siren. So Ben has to attack this girl and save his little brother because that is his job. He is the boss and that's how he helps his mom. And he loves Davy. So a fight ensues and he finally wins the fight and gets his little brother on shore. He's unconscious. He performs CPR and his little brother wakes up. And I wish that's where the story ended, but these are meant to be not really scary, but these are meant to not have good endings. So just as Davy wakes up, the siren comes back to the shore and wrenches Ben back into the ocean because the life must be paid. And so she takes him back into the ocean and he's never seen again. That's the end of the story. And we'll talk about the resolution here in a little bit. So, now knowing that, this is the character I have for Ben. So when I go and write my character for the siren, I'm not going to write all these. I'm just going to quickly kind of go through them. Her name is Ula. And I looked it up because in another language it means like, it means Gem of the Sea. That's what it is. And that's the name of the story is Gem of the Sea. She's a girl. She's about 10 to 11 as well. She looks the same age as them. Race, I would not let anybody else see this, but for my own notes, I would write down a siren because she is a siren. But I don't want to reveal that secret to my readers. So my readers won't see my character sheet. Okay? In a normal situation. Fill out all this stuff, hair color, blah, blah, blah. What are principles she'll never betray? She'll never betray the ocean, and she'll never betray her people and what they do. What will prompt them to make sacrifices? She'd probably sacrifice, like, if somehow they're going to destroy the ocean, she might give up something to protect that ocean. And what drives them to do what they do? Her instinct, part of it, 'cause she's a siren and she eats people. That's instinct. And protecting the ocean, because that's kind of her thing. Once again, I would fill out all of these. Obviously, like brands, she's a siren. She doesn't know brands. So in this situation, that is when I would be like, she is unaware of brands because she is an ocean creature. Not to be lazy. I wouldn't be like, oh, she doesn't like brands. I would say, why? Bonds. She cares most about herself and the ocean. She feels a special connection, obviously, to the ocean. There's a cave that's mentioned, and I'd probably mention that cave as well because she hangs out there. Sea glass is her most treasured possession. Flaws, what make her angry. The flaws are really, really important, okay? And I know I talked about that before, but I really want you to understand. So, things that make her angry are humans and garbage and upset sea creatures. So I would fill these out as well. I'd give background information, how she is a sea creature, she lives in the ocean, blah, blah, blah. I would look up 2 photos. Photos of her as a normal girl, and then I'd post another photo of like an angry siren. Okay? And then what she wants most in life is to eat, and she will kill to do it because she has to. That is the way she works. Okay, so now I have these 2 character sheets filled out. My protagonist is obviously Ben, because he's the good guy. Traditionally, your protagonist is the good guy. But really, your protagonist is just the main character of who you are following. And then we have our antagonist, the character that goes against our protagonist. So in this situation, I have this siren, and she's going against Ben. Okay, so character sheets done, good, cut, let's go. I'm going to move on to the plot diagram portion. So it depends on how you work. I work linearly. I start from the beginning and I go to the end. But some people don't do that. Some people are like, I know what's happening at the climax and I need to write it right now. And so they get to the climax and they're like, there's an explosion and fire. If that's how you write, that is great. Start at the climax. If you know how it ends, start at the ending. Start with what you feel you know the most about. Like I said, I work linearly, so I start at the beginning. So it says place. It takes place at the ocean and grandparents' beach house. Time is modern, and I think it's important to mention that it's summer vacation. Characters, my main character is Ben, and my secondary character is Davy. Mood, it's lighthearted in the beginning. And the point of view, I write it from third person. You can make the decision on your story if you want it in first person or third person. I do not suggest second person. It's a different kind of writing. Okay? Protagonist is Ben. Antagonist is Ula, the siren. Once again, this is for you. This is not for your reader. I would not want my readers knowing that she is a siren. In my story, it's up to the reader to kind of decide if she really is or if she's not. When he meets her, it's, I'd say suspicious. We're a little suspicious of her. Conflict. Ben meets a girl. This creates conflict between the two brothers, and it creates conflict within our story because we are introduced to the idea of a siren. So we have to figure out if she's good or bad. So man versus man, or boy versus girl, really. Climax of my story. The climax of my story is Ben performs CPR on recently drowned Davy. I remember where the name Ben came from. Ben drowned. I don't know if anybody knows that story, but that's where that came from. Okay. Falling action. What is the outcome of the conflict? Davy wakes up and he's okay. What are the resulting events? So this is a scary story. So scary stories don't end well. So the resulting events is that Davy is saved, but Ben is dragged back into the ocean. And the mood is very tense. Final outcome, Ben had to be sacrificed for Davy. And the theme is listen to your elders. That's what I would take away, because the grandpa told him this scary story and how to avoid this. And, you know, they just regarded it as a story, because these creatures don't actually exist, right? So listen to your elders, and then maybe some monsters are real. The author's purpose, my purpose, absolutely is to scare children. That's what I want to do. And the mood at the resolution is it's somewhat desolate. You don't really feel successful at the end. It's, you know, Davy was saved, but at what price? So that's that. If you notice, I added another sheet on here, and it says list your rising action events. So you need probably about 10 of these. So, and these are events that need to get more suspenseful over time. They need to grow. So the very first one is go to their grandparents' beach house, right? They play games. We get to know the characters. So we get to know the characters through their gameplay. Grandpa tells them a story about a siren, and it scares the boys. Next day, they go to the beach to go on an adventure and end up playing hide and seek. During hide and seek, Ben forgets to look for Davy because he found a young girl. Ben becomes infatuated with this girl, and Davy discovers he's been forgotten. He is somewhat upset with Ben. The girl, Ula, convinces them to go out to the ocean and takes them further than they've ever been. Ben is fearful for Davy because he doesn't know how to swim well yet. Ula starts to show signs of being a siren and then suddenly begins to drown. Ben fights Ula and kicks her away from Davy. Okay, so do you see how it grew in suspense? It grew over time. So that is what's happening here. And these are the things that are happening on the rising action. Okay? So, now that I have my 2 character sheets and I have my plot diagram, these are the skeletal bare bones of my story. So now we need to go to our rough draft and start writing our story. This is the part where you are just getting everything from your brain onto this computer. We're just pulling it as much as we can. We're putting it on here. So we're not worried about spelling. We're not worried about grammar. We're not worried about organization or anything like that. We are getting words out of our head onto the computer. Okay? So, what you're going to do is you're literally just going to, open up, new. Come on. And you say Google Docs. And so we have a brand new Google Doc. And, you can give it a title if you want. If you don't really have a title, you can just call it Narrative Story. Mine is called Gem of the Sea, which I did not come up with the title until way after the story was completed. Okay. So now, like I said, we're just getting stuff out of our brain onto the computer. So I'm going to, like I said, I work linearly. Maybe you want to start with the climax. The beautiful thing about computers is that you can start with the climax. You can highlight all of it, or you can just click in front of it and be like, okay, now I'm going to write backwards. And you write to the beginning. Back in the day, I had a piece of paper, and sometimes, I tried writing from, the climax, and I'd be like, and then there was explosions and blah, blah, blah. And now I have to, put a box around it and be like, this is climax, this is later in the story. And then I start writing the exposition, or I'll start writing the following action, or whatever happens next. Computers, we can just copy and paste it where it needs to go. So, just start where you want to start. I'm going to start at the beginning. Ben looked out the window as his mother drove them further out of the city. They began to come up on the ocean where his grandparents had a summer beach house. Ben loved going to his grandparents' home because there was never a summer he'd forget because of all the fun adventures he'd go on with his little brother Davy. Okay, first paragraph, boom, just got out of my brain. I don't even know if this is good or not, but I'm setting up the situation where they are driving to their grandparents. I know where they're going. I have his mom, his grandparents. I basically introduced all my characters right here, and then we'll go into more details describing them later. And I know that he's going to the beach for the summer. So exposition, we kind of covered the setting and the characters pretty quickly. I definitely need more exposition, that's for sure. But for now, this is good. So, what you would do at this point is you would just keep writing and get all those plot points out of the way. So, what was my first plot point? They go to their grandparents' beach house. Okay, so I'd probably keep writing until they actually got to the beach house. And then I'd talk about how they play games. That's how we get to know their characters a little bit more. They're going to play a board game together. And then we get the introduction of the siren. Okay? And then, so do you see how I just keep writing and I'm filling in this meat and I'm making each of these events match up to the other event. Okay, so that is our rough draft. It should be anywhere from 500 to 1,000 words. I know that sounds like a lot, but my story here, if we look at this, my story is 7 pages. That's really long for a short story. And it's 2,823 words. That's almost 3,000 words. So you only need to write a third of this. So that would be 1 to 3 pages. Okay? So, and honestly, as long as you're covering your exposition, your rising, your climax, your falling, and your resolution, I'm not too concerned about the word count. As long as it is a complete story, you should be fine. Okay? Okay. So that is the rough draft stage. A lot of people are getting confused about that. Rough draft. You're just getting everything from your brain out. You're getting the story out. And you'll need time to work on it. I know a lot of you were confused, and so you're kind of running out of time. You might have to write over the weekend to complete the story. And I'm sorry. Okay? So, because next week we need to start editing it, and that'll be a different lesson. I'll be back to help you edit your lesson or your writing. Okay? Okay, so that's the rough draft. Now, revisions. So on your little note here that I sent to you guys about rough draft and revisions. So the revisions, you need to read through your entire rough draft. And you need to consider the following questions. You need to change some of these things, because if you don't, then you're not revising it. Revision is so important. So the guy that I'm working with, we're writing these short stories, he'll revise my stories and I'll revise his stories, and then we'll both go back and revise our own stories. Your favorite movies, if you've ever watched any of the Avenger movies, they revise that script so much. They revise that script, and luckily they have a budget and they have a deadline. And they revise that script up until there's no more money and up until there's no more time. And we see basically what they ran out of time to keep working on. And so that's what we end up seeing. So revision is so important. You're going to keep adding and taking things away. You have a deadline. It is Tuesday. You need to have your stories done by Tuesday. That is your deadline for your rough draft. You can't keep revising your rough draft past Tuesday. Okay? But you need to revise it. So these are the questions you need to consider. Could my story be better if I reorganize it? So you read through it and you're like, what if I mention the story about the siren at the very, very beginning, and then it's a flash forward, and then we come into the story and make it better. Does my story make sense? Are you reading through your story and you're like, oh my God, I don't understand what time is or how it works. I need to change my story. Make sure it makes sense. Did you follow your plot diagram? Once again, like I said, I'm going to be writing about how they get to the cabin or the beach house, how they're going to play games and get to know each other. I'm going to follow that plot diagram. How can I make every paragraph more detailed? This is really, really important. Right here it says, did I activate all 5 of my senses? You have 5 senses, right? Sight, hearing, taste, smell, and touch. Use all of them. If you have a ghost story, then you will use your 6th sense, because your 6th sense is to see ghosts. Okay? You need to use at least 5 of your 5 senses. Okay? Think about literary elements that you've learned not just from me, but from your past. Like metaphors, similes, personification. Okay? So let me give you an example. Let me go back to the story that I started writing. Ben looked out the window as his mother drove them further out of the city. Can I change this to be more descriptive? Ben looked out the window as his mother drove them. Period. What if I change this? Instead of further out of the city, I said, the skyscrapers scratched the clouds and slowly shrunk into farmhouses that whispered into secrets to the trees. And then another sentence, the trees began to wane out to flat grassland that waved at me and slowly waved at the ocean. So instead of saying my mother drove me from the city to the ocean, I used a lot of personification here. The skyscrapers scratch the clouds because they're so tall. They're scratching the clouds. But they slowly shrunk into farmhouses, which are not as tall as skyscrapers, that are the same height as a tree, so they would whisper secrets into the tree's ears. And the trees began to wane out because the trees started to grow even flatter, and they turned into flat grassland that waved because the wind's waving at the ocean. I don't know if you've ever been there, but the ocean's usually windy. Waved at the ocean. So now we know that we're at the ocean. Do you see how that was? It's so much more descriptive without just being so plain. Like, we drove from my house to the ocean. We got descriptive here. We used personification to give us a portrait, a picture, a painting of what Ben is seeing out the window. Okay? They began to come up on the ocean where his grandparents had a summer beach house. Once again, I think I like leaving this here because then it's like, okay, if you're not poetic to understand that we're at the ocean, by the way, we drove up to the ocean at the beach house. I can go into description here of the beach house. Or Ben loved going to his grandparents' home because there was never a summer he'd forget because of all the fun adventures he'd go on with his little brother Davy. I want to start activating more senses. Let's say when Ben walked into his grandparents, oh my gosh, I can't spell, a strong scent of, what's that stuff called? Potpourri, because old people always have potpourri. It's like little dried leaves and berries and flowers and stuff, so it smells, I don't know. So strong scent of potpourri filled the room. The wooden walls had thin wallpaper that you could tell had been peeling over time. See how now I'm starting to really activate my senses of what the house looks like. So like, the wallpaper is intact, but it's starting to peel. So my grandparents have obviously owned this home for a long time. We're starting to get an age of the house. Okay? And so I'm just inventing this. This is not how the story goes, by the way. I mean, it's following the same skeletal structure, but it's different than how I've done my story. And that's the important part. I know my characters. I know how I want the plot to go. So I can rewrite this story 1,000 times, and it could be different every single time, but still the same story. So I'll kind of explain a little bit more about that. Okay? So that's the revisions that I was talking about. Did all of your rising action events build tension and suspense? So if we look at my rising action events, it starts mundane. We go to a beach house. We play some games. We hear a scary story. We go on an adventure the next day. See how it's starting to rise? During hide and seek, we forget to find Davy. And then Ben becomes infatuated with this girl. And then the girl convinces him to go out further into the ocean. They've never been that far before. And he's scared because Davy doesn't know how to swim really well yet. And then the girl starts showing signs of being a siren, and then she turns into a siren. Do you see how it just, fun adventure, okay, stuff's getting bad. It's rising. We're going into suspense. Okay? Alright. And then, let's see, next one. Was my climax strong enough? So originally in my climax, the girl just started to drown Davy, but I was like, no, I needed to be stronger. So I had Ben get into a physical fight with her. And she started to show signs of being, not just show signs, she revealed herself as a siren. So she had sharp teeth and her gills were really prominent. The climax was a lot stronger than the first time I wrote the climax. Okay? And then was everything resolved? In this story, it's resolved. I mean, Davy is saved and survives. Ben is dragged back out to the ocean. And that part is not necessarily resolved. But that's where horror stories kind of cheat through resolution. So it is resolved, but not really. Okay? And then maybe I should change something. Maybe he gets dragged out, but then maybe there's like flyers and stuff up for Ben's disappearance. Maybe I should add that. So that's something I could go back through on my own story and revise. Like I said, you can revise a story over and over and over again until you die. So maybe I would do that. Maybe I might. Okay, and so I want you to consider all these questions when you go back through revision. If you go through it and you're like, could your story be better if I reorganized it? Nope. Does the story make sense? Yep. Did I follow my plot diagram? Yep. How do I make a paragraph more detailed? I don't need to. Did I activate all my 5 senses? Probably. I don't know. Did all my rising action events build up tension and suspense? Yep. No. You need to change these things. You need to go back and change them. If you don't, then it's a bad story. I'm sorry. That's the fact. You're not a prodigy that just can write beautiful stories right off the bat. No one in the history of the world has ever done that. And I don't think you're going to be the first. Sorry, no offense. You need to revise. Okay? So, your rough draft and your revisions need to be done by Tuesday. They need to be, because we need to go into editing. Okay? Don't worry about spelling or grammar or subject verb agreement or anything like that just yet. We will focus on that next week. This week, we need to have our rough draft and revision completed. So, if you have any questions about any of this, please email me. I've had a lot of you guys emailing me. I haven't graded a lot of things because, like I said, I'm sleeping all the time. I truly am sick. So, I haven't given zeros either. It's just sitting there. And hopefully I can start getting some grades in for you guys because I am feeling better today. Today's the first day that I felt really normal. And hopefully I can start getting things better for you guys and more feedback. But you need to have your rough draft. Unfortunately, we have a deadline, and it is January 21st. We can't write past that because it's the end of the semester, and my gradebook closes. And that's where we're at. Okay? So these stories need to be done. You don't have extra time. You need to work on it. So email me if you have any questions, any confusion, any problems, and I will do my best to get back at you. I don't know what time I will respond to you. I will respond to you the best I can. Okay? I miss you guys. I hope everything's working out, and I hope you guys can get this all done. Okay? So let me know if you need help. Thanks.